You know, ladies and gentlemen, when we were growing up in the 1970s and 80s, when a Stephen King movie came to the screen, we either went to see it or knew the plot of the movie before we even arrived at the theaters. But this Stephen King, short story brought to film life didn't really do much in the box office and is rarely talked about some 30 years after its release. Now, today we're going to be talking about a Tobe Hopper movie called The Mangler. Now, this horror film, directed by Tobe Hopper and written by Hopper and Harry Allen Towers under the pseudonym of Peter Welbeck, is based upon the Stephen King 1972 short story of the same name, which appeared in 1978 inaugural short story collection Night Shift. It stars Robert Englund of all people and Ted Levine. It also spanned two sequels, The Mangler 2 and The Mangler Reborn. Now, you're probably saying to yourself, what is Freddy Krueger doing in a Stephen King movie? Now, in the movie, The Mangler in Gartley Blue Ribbon Laundry Service is a laundry press owned by Bill Gartley. The trouble starts when Gartley's niece, Sherry, accidentally cuts herself on a lever connected to the machine and splashes blood on the Mangler's tread while trying to avoid being crushed by an old icebox some movers are clumsily carrying past. Sparks and light streams occur when both the blood and the icebox come into close contact with the Mangler. Later, Mrs. Frawley, an elderly worker, struggling to open a bottle of antacids, spills them on the moving tread. When she attempts to collect them, the safety shield inexplicably lifts up and traps her hand inside, followed by her entire body getting pulled in the machine, crushed and folded like a sheet. Now, police officer John Hunton, with the help of a dermatologist's brother Mark, investigates the incident and others that soon follow. As the plot progresses, Mark tries to convince Hunton that the machine may be possessed, especially after seeing the possessed icebox, and the only way to stop the deaths is to exorcise the machine to dispel whatever demon is inhabiting it. You also come to learn Gartley and the town elders have all sacrificed their virginal daughters to the machine on their 16th birthdays in exchange for wealth and power, with Gartley planning to do the same to Sherry to complete his end of the bargain. Now, with Sherry's help, the two men attempt to exorcise the demon, which also kills Gartley, his lover, and protege Ling Su, and the laundry's foreman Stanner, by reciting a prayer and administering holy water. The machine gives one last groan and shuts down. As the three sigh with relief, Hunton takes some antacids, admitting to Mark that they belong to Mrs. Frawley. Mark suddenly realizes that the key ingredient in the antacids is deadly nightshade, also called the Hand of Glory as outlined in his occult book. Since the machine was accidentally fed the same antacids, Mark realizes that not only was the exorcism useless, as the demon is still alive, it's now stronger than ever. The machine bursts to life and now appears to have a mind of its own, shedding pieces of metal and rising up like a wild beast. The three run through the warehouse, chased by the now mobile Mangler. The Mangler tears Mark apart, killing him, while John and Sherry descend a flight of stairs, where Sherry attempts to give herself to the Mangler to stop it, but John stops her. In a hurry to escape, they fall through a large manhole into the sewer below, the machine struggling to get to them. Suddenly, something falls from the machine into the water, and a mechanical wail ensues. The machine draws back and becomes still as John and Sherry escape. Now, while waiting to hear news of Sherry, John receives a letter from his departed friend and confidant, photographer J.J. Pitcherman, who warns him not to trust anyone in the town missing a body part, as they are possessed by the Mangler. Time passes and John drops in on her. However, to his great dismay, he discovers the machine has returned to its place on the floor and resumed its duties as a speed ironer. Now, Sherry, now missing a ring finger from her encounter with the Mangler, has taken her uncle's place as the new tyrannical owner of the Blue Ribbon Laundry. He throws away the flowers he brought her and leaves the factory for good. Now, screenplay again by Hopper, Brooks, and Welbeck. Again, the Mangler short story, produced by Anand Singh, Vanessa Pike as well as in the movie, Amnon Solomon, cinematographer, edited by David Haytner, music by Barrington Philog. Production companies were Allied Film and Distant Horizon, and of course at the time a lot of Stephen King movies coming out through New Line. Now, release date was March 3rd, 95 in UK, South Africa, and United States. 106 minutes with a paltry, compared to other King movies, 1.8 million domestic box office. Now, The Mangler was released again in the U.S. on the 3rd of March 95, and New Line released it on DVD 17th of August 2004. Now, in its first week, it underperformed and took in 1.1 million on 800 screens at the U.S. box office. It also failed on the European box office. On the film review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes, the film holds a 27% approval rating on 11 reviews. Richard Harrington in the Washington Post wrote, "The Mangler is ludicrous from start to finish. Its plot lines dangle, its effects fail to dazzle, and the acting and directing are uniformly bad. Even the least demanding of genre fans will be hard-pressed to tremble in its presence." Mark Savlov of the Austin Chronicle wrote, "Perhaps it's time for Tobe Hopper to hang up his lake meter. After a string of disappointments culminating in a silly waste of time, it's hard to care if horror's Golden Boy carries on or not." Now, Godfrey Cheshire of Variety says his villain is a silly contrivance and described the acting and stories lackluster. Stephen Holden in the New York Times called it a potpourri of supernatural cliches and warmed over Stephen King notions about corruption randomly stuck together with fill-in-the-blanks dialogue. Now, David Kroenke of the LA Times wrote, "Consider for a second what you might honestly expect from a movie called The Mangler. Well, it doesn't even aim that high." Stephen Ree of the Philadelphia Inquirer called it a plodding and virtually plotless film that should have been played for laughs. Stephen Hunter of the Baltimore Sun stated the film recycles common Stephen King themes, but the film's novelty makes it enjoyable for horror fans. Now, The Mangler fared somewhat better with retrospective reviews from critics. Bloody Disgusting gave it 3 out of 5 stars, while Dread Central also get a 3.5 out of 5. Now, unfortunately, Mike Long of DVD Talk rated it a half star out of 5 and wrote, "There have been many bad throwaway projects based on material from Stephen King, but The Mangler has to be one of the worst. The movie's laughable premise is only brought down by the inept filmmaking on display here." David Johnson of DVD Verdict wrote that the film features a lot of gore, a solid creepy atmosphere, some wonky special effects, all set against a really dumb premise. Now, film critic Scout Tafoya of RogerEbert.com included The Mangler in his video series The Unloved, where he highlights films which receive mixed and negative reviews, yet he believes to have artistic value. Tafoya considers the film to be up there with Christine and The Shining as among the best Stephen King adaptations, in that it's a stylistic representation of the director's obsessions, not just a boilerplate transposition of his texts. Tafoya further lamented that it's perversely fitting that his greatest failure is about the very machinery of capitalism that would imprison him in a world of low-budget productions. The Mangler was a kind of oddball film with a noble center that had become a rarity in American cinema. That just makes it that much special. Now, I have not seen The Mangler, nor I wish to. My good supporter of Stephen King, the great Bev Vincent of River Charlotte, New Brunswick, the great author, short story writer, could talk better in The Mangler than I can. But I don't remember this making any type of what they call video release or theater importance, because we had so many different types of Stephen King movies. This was pretty well, why? Should every Stephen King short story become a movie? No, but of course King and Hopper worked together on a revival of Twilight Zone in the mid-'80s, and some went good, some went bad. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the latest on our Stephen King podcast. If you like what we're doing here, give us a like, comment, subscribe, or share, or super chat. And don't forget, requests are always appreciated and always highly considered. Thanks for listening. Bye.